Namaskar dosto, good evening friends. I am Dr. Sanjay Kalra, your friendly endocrinologist and you're watching Dr. KK's Med Talks. Thursdays with Dr. Sanjay Kalra. आज का हमारे नॉन-स्टॉप शो का 707वां 707th एपिसोड है. Let's have the headlines for today. In Delhi, the suspected monkeypox patient tested negative. The patient is fine now and has been discharged home. So that is at least one false scare and we are very happy that the patient turned out negative. My Lab has launched an innovation center for diagnostics in Pune. Hyderabad-based Zenera Pharma has also got permission from the CDSCO to manufacture a generic version of the Pfizer COVID-19 pill. So that is good development for India. On the occasion of World Hepatitis Day, the Union Health Minister, Mr. Mansukh Mandavia, has said that people's involvement is pivotal for the elimination of hepatitis. And we couldn't agree more with him. बिल्कुल सही कहा हमारे माननीय यूनियन हेल्थ मिनिस्टर ने कि यदि हम सब लोग अपनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं समझेंगे, हम इकट्ठे मिलकर काम नहीं करेंगे, तो हेपेटाइटिस को हम हरा नहीं सकते. And that holds true for every disease, every challenge to diabetes. In Mumbai, which is one of the hotspots for COVID-19 in our country, loss of sense and loss of smell has emerged as a common symptom during the first and second COVID-19 waves in 20 and 21, respectively. So that's so much about COVID and monkeypox and hepatitis. But all health is based upon a very simple premise. Let's see what that is. Let's see what our topic is for today. It's based upon food. It's based upon nutrition. So that's why our topic is nutrition for all. And our guest is a person who is no stranger. A warm welcome, ma'am. Welcome back to KK Med Talks.
Thank you, Dr. Kalra. Yes, a pleasure to be back again. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Professor Varsha is internationally renowned. Her Janam Bhumi and Karam Bhumi is India. Her Janam Bhumi is India rather, but her Karam Bhumi is the entire world. She works across the world. She's a clinical nutritionist, an author, an educator, a researcher. She is founder, chair, and managing trustee of the Indian Institute of Nutritional Sciences Trust, a panel member of the World Health Organization's guidelines for nutrition. And she has been principal investigator in India for the Diabetes in India Nutrition Guidelines study. So many textbooks, so many awards, so many programs, so many conferences. Ma'am, it's a pleasure, it's an honor to have you back with us.
Thank you, Dr. Karla, for the introduction. Sometimes when I hear you, I don't even believe you're talking about me.
But that is true, ma'am. And that is your humility speaking. So many people welcoming you back to the show, ma'am. Dr. N.S. Sharda sir from Ahmedabad, he says malnutrition and extra nutrition, both are equally bad. So maybe we'll talk about that. What is the double burden of malnutrition that India faces? Vandana Bora ji, Dr. Sanjeev Puri from Punjab, Vinny Joglekar ji is a nutritionist from Bangalore, and she looks up to you, madam. Gopal Mowalia ji, Seema Bindru ji is a health advocate from Kolkata, Anamika Anu ji. Dr. Ramesh Pal Singh Pawar sir is a senior pediatrician. He sends you his greetings. Manisha Raji says, do talk about nutrition to prevent and to treat fever and cold. So let's pick up that thread, ma'am. This question is from Manisha. So, आजकल मैम fever भी है, cold भी है. There's a lot of viral going on. Sometimes you get tested for COVID, sometimes you don't. But in general, nutrition and immunity, ma'am, how do we prevent fever and cold? Can we do that first through nutrition?
Yeah. We can start with the immunity. Generally, when we look at it, the whole body is nothing but proteins. And we normally divide proteins for sake of understanding into three compartments. The first one is the somatic protein, the soma, the cells, and that is measured by height and weight. And we know that all the people are talking about, the other person mentioned about malnutrition, bad nutrition, which is both under and over nutrition, both gets covered under the same word, malnutrition. So you find that, we have people who might be stunted, who may not be having weight as per their age, gender, as well as their height. So that is where we look at the somatic protein. The second part of the malnutrition, we assess by looking at visceral protein, especially looking at total protein, serum albumin. And if we are doing CBC, we are looking at hemoglobin and the WBC, the platelets, etc. And the third compartment is the immune protein. Now, when we take protein, there is no way you can say that all three get equal division of what we have consumed. So we basically, when we make an assessment, we say where the compromise is. And at this point of time, we definitely know that with COVID, with fever, with infection, with inflammation, the immune protein, the third compartment, is definitely compromised. So, if we were to look at it in terms of immune protein being compromised, then we definitely need to give ourselves a balanced diet, not just protein. We need to give a balanced diet such that protein is spared to only build your body, to sort of rehabilitate or repair your system rather than being used for energy. This is a concept people don't understand, and that is where you will find even the gyms, promoting protein powders with a muscle shown like that, that you take this protein and you immediately get muscles. No, it doesn't happen. It's not a direct equation like that. Similarly, you see an advertisement where we are shown, a bus driver recklessly driving on the road, but he suddenly sleeps off on the wheel, the steering wheel itself, and you have a person come just flying in through the window and give him glucon D, or the glucose solution, and then he's again back on the road as a maniac. No, even that doesn't happen. Everybody seems to forget that we have got a fantastic GI tract, which is as big as a tennis ground, which if it is spread out, and we really have a fantastic mechanism by where each nutrient has to be absorbed, and that includes all macronutrients as well as micronutrients. So if you're talking about nutrition for all, then I would only say that you have to equate it to building of a house. If you want to build a house, you need the bricks, you need cement, you need sand, you need steel, wood, and water. Just because we have rains all over India, we cannot say, I will just supply you water, please build the house. You need all the six nutrients, the ingredients for building a house, and in the right proportion. So we need carbohydrate, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, water. इस घर को बनाने के लिए भी वही चीज चाहिए जो आप अपने रहने के लिए घर बनाते हैं ना, उसी हिसाब से.
मैम,
But
ये
each
तो
comes
आपने
in
इतने अच्छे तरीके से एक्सप्लेन किया. एंड नाउ Manisha and everybody, Poonam ji, Anamika ji, everybody who is logged in, we have a fair answer of perhaps where we are going wrong as a society, as a nation. जब कोई हमें सिंपल कॉमन सेंस पढ़ाता है, जैसे कि मैडम पढ़ा रही हैं, मैडम इज जस्ट टीचिंग अस गुड न्यूट्रिशन सेंस, गुड क्लिनिकल सेंस, जस्ट कॉमन सेंस. आपने घर बनाना है, आपको अलग अलग चीजें चाहिए, तो ऐसे ही आपने अपनी बॉडी को तंदुरुस्त बनाना है. यू वांट टू मेक योर बॉडी इम्यून, स्ट्रांग, एबल टू फाइट फीवर एंड कोल्ड. यू नीड ऑल द न्यूट्रिएंट्स, द मैक्रो एंड द माइक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स. मैक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स ज्यादा चाहिए होंगे, माइक्रो कम चाहिए होंगे. So, ma'am, you've been in nutrition now for so many decades. These fads that we see now, of course, they are amplified by social media, by the ease of communication. These fads about keto diet, restrictive diet, very low calorie, very low protein, very low carb diets, were they existing a few decades ago as well in certain circles? What is
yes,
your
yes,
opinion about the
yes.
whole thing?
No, they've evolved over a period type, and now you get to, as you said, the social media just highlights it, and broadcasts it much wider range. But you won't believe this has been happening for ages, and this is where my fight has been all the time, especially when it comes to the news media and the social media. You will suddenly find a headline which says, "Eating eggs for breakfast is excellent." And that is just a headline, a catchy headline. You read through the contents, it is talking about a study in US or UK or wherever, and we still have the slave mentality of saluting if it is a white donkey also. We will salute because he is white. Okay, so you will find that it has to be a study which is in the Western world, and they do not read between the lines or over the lines or under the lines at all the fact the eggs were compared to donuts. And who in India knows what is donuts, and do we eat donuts for breakfast? We don't. So then why should we be eating eggs as a substitute? We have such fantastic cuisine. I think the Tower of Babel must have been in India, because for every 500 meters, we have a different lingo and a different cuisine. And we have evolved. We are the world's biggest population. We have evolved only because of our resilience, and also because we evolved. Our ancestors have evolved a beautiful combination of what should be a healthy diet. But we will not want to follow that. We will say, don't eat vade, don't eat bhaji, but we will say, eat donuts. Both vade and the donuts have the same appearance. But if it is donuts, we are willing to eat. But if it is vade, we don't want to eat.
And pay
So
a
we are not.
premium also, ma'am. Pay 10 times a premium for a donut.
Exactly. I still get people, my biggest fight earlier was with the conflicts, only because I said we already had poha, we had rice flakes, we had puff rice. तो हमारे पास ये टेक्नोलॉजी थी. Why must I get imported cornflakes for breakfast? And I never ate rice flakes for breakfast except in Gujarat. पोहा तो सिर्फ नॉर्थ गुजरात में ही खाया जाता है. But that I realize, that each area has taken out one particular food item and made a mess of eating. So I find that, there is another recipe from Gujarat which I really am, very much annoyed, and I would want to say it here, is that khakra. You get mobile khakra, the size that can go into your pocket, and they say that it is panacea. They add methi bhaji, they add all sorts of combinations to lure you. But the very way of how it is cooked, how it is made, it is application of high temperatures, and that is where you get a combination. So professor from premier institute, Loyola College in Chennai, had done research on this khakra, and he said, Dr. Varsha, can you do something about telling your Gujarati people not to eat this stuff, because the browning reaction, the myeloid reaction that happens brings up complexes that are cancer producing. And just imagine, this has become something which is marketed at a great level. आप कनाडा जाओ इंडिया स्टोर्स में, आप अमेरिका जाओ इंडिया स्टोर्स में, आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया जाओ इंडिया स्टोर्स में, सब जगह पे आपको खाकरा मिलेगा. And people think that, that is the best thing to eat. So everybody does shortcuts in the way it is to be eaten. Our traditional way of eating is forgotten.
Ma'am, आपने कुछ एक words use किए. Let us take them one by one. We also have with us Dr. R.S. Chaudhary, sir. He is a senior surgeon from Haryana. Dr. Piyush, he is a lifestyle medicine specialist. And Dr. Mohan Shenoy is an endocrinologist from Trivandrum. All are logged in. Bandana Bora ji आपको नमस्कार कर रही हैं. And also Manju Sharma ji, thank you कह रही हैं for your previous visit to us when you came on KK Med Talks. So they are all remembering that. And so many wishes for you. Everybody is honored to be listening to you. मैम, आपने अभी बात की कैंसर की, कार्सिनोजेनिक की, फिर आपने बात की about high temperatures for cooking. So can you just do this one by one? And since our topic is nutrition for all, first let's talk about cooking in our kitchen at home, home-based cooking.
Yeah.
अगर मैं किसी चीज को बॉईल करता हूँ, स्टीम करता हूँ, माइक्रोवेव करता हूँ, oven में डाल देता हूँ for a long period of time, what happens? What is that browning reaction? And how are the ways in which in my own kitchen I'm creating carcinogenic things in my food?
Yeah, see, you will even begin with a very simple thing, puris have overtaken everybody. In the south, the puri potato is a huge combination, popular combination. In the north also, puri with lot of things is what we get. And you will find that in homes where you find the frying as a method of cooking, कढ़ाई में वो तेल डाल देते हैं, okay, and it doesn't get over with one cooking. So what happens is, even papads, and in south we call them applams, and then you have all these various things that you just fry them just before you start eating. So what happens is कि इस कढ़ाई में जो तेल रखा हुआ है, it has already been subjected to prolonged heating while we have been cooking. Then it is cooled, and what you do in the next day is you add extra fresh oil to it because the level has gone down. So you already have oil that was subjected to prolonged heating existing, and then you're adding fresh oil and you continue cooking. So just imagine what sort of complex that is making. This we need to understand. Anything that is fried on commercial basis on those huge cauldrons, they do not remove that one time oil that or fat that has been used for cooking. They just replenish it with more and more oil to the existing one. You're asking for big trouble.
So in the
Okay.
kitchen also, ma'am, at home. So what is the take-home message for us?
The take home
Minimize
message
frying.
is that if you have to, you must discard that extra oil. Do it with, the first thing is you don't have to eat everything which is fried. The second thing is that you can use that for a different purpose altogether, like a shortening or something. That is where you're not reheating it to high temperatures. That might be a safer way of doing it than to be reheating it all the time. That is one. The second thing that we do is, like I mentioned about the chapatis and all that. Why was khakra created? Khakra was created only because most of the homes in villages, they don't cook each time, and so what they do is they make extra chapatis and then they roast it like this, so that the shelf life is there. But you cannot use this as an industry and replace all your hot food with just eating khakras. Khakras go with tea, khakras go with coffee, khakra just go for nibbling. So that is again, so the same chapati, when you convert it to khakra, it is doing you harm. There is another way of how we preserve in the villages, how we used to preserve rice, especially in the south. The rice was put into a lot of water, and they always say that eating that old rice is very nutritious. I've seen some papers also being published by people, but I'm not too sure of the evidence that is available, because my logic tells me that when I put rice into the water and leave it for a long period of time, the starch gets leached out into the water. And very many times the man of the family will be given the rice, which according to me is a dead food, and the remaining water with salt and chili will be drunk by the woman, so she gets more nutrition than man. Without realizing, by default she gets a better food as such, but the very purpose of eating it that way is erroneous. We also have this tendency of making things with lot of gravies, and gravies are basically more water. Where we have more water which have no taste, then in that case we have to add sourness. Either we are adding lime or tamarind or whatever it is, so we add sourness to the water, and the sourness will demand that चटपटा बनाने के लिए मिर्च डालना है, so we make it spicy hot, and the water and the tamarind or sourness with chili hot will demand more of salt. So anywhere we are using gravies, and the main vegetable, or whether you're making gravy even as chicken, mutton or fish, the portion of chicken, mutton, fish is less. The gravies are the one which is more. Okay. And even if it is cooked by the family on a Sunday afternoon, the non-veg piece is over because it's expensive. It is over at lunchtime itself. But the gravy in the name of mutton gravy, chicken gravy remains. And then the tendency is to eat at night the dinner with the gravy, and even next day, Monday morning, breakfast also goes with the gravy. So what are you doing? You're only pampering 1.5 inch of your tongue. The rest of the inches suffer. You're fed the stomach, starve the body.
So I think basic reasons, and even if we do think of economy, because things are expensive, mutton is expensive, chicken is expensive, but the same gravy can be used. Maybe you put some eggs in it, just put in some boiled eggs if you're having non-veg, or
The
maybe some
concept,
paneer.
yeah, but the concept is, what I tell people is that you don't make extra or excess
You don't make
gravy.
extra.
Don't
Ma'am,
make that gravy
uh,
last.
one way of explaining this would be, I go to a restaurant. There I'm getting tandoori fish or tandoori chicken or tandoori paneer for maybe, let us say, 300 rupees a plate. But I'm getting butter chicken, cream chicken for 600 rupees a plate. Ma'am, just talk about who is fleecing whom in that 600 rupees. Are we getting a bargain from the restaurant owner, or is he fleecing us?
Oh,
Let's
he
talk
is
about
fleecing
that.
us. See, even the names, please look at the names, okay? If you will go through the menu card, if it is something like do piazza, mutton do piazza or chicken do piazza, mug do piazza, it is fresh chicken, believe me. Okay, because the pyaz is not going to mask if it has become stale non-veg. All right, but if you get mutton rogan josh, rogi aayega tumko, kyunki है ना, it is absolutely stale thing, and to mask the staleness they are adding stronger spices. So you also need to understand your recipes and
Yes.
how they are being prepared. Okay, and though we are talking about portion size, you know, even ICMR says you don't need more than 50 grams of chicken, mutton, or even one egg for a day. All right. They will happily catch hold of or saying that, you know, we are meeting the day's requirement when we are giving you the portion. But you look at the dish coming in such a big dish with lot of gravy, and you will also find a lot of oil or fat or everything floating on that. I always say, if your plate and your hands require soap to wash after you finish eating, believe me, you'll have to eat soap to clean your insides.
मैम ये आपने बहुत अच्छा कहा, सो अलाउ मी टू रिपीट दैट। मैम एक तो ये बता रही हैं हमें कि आप अपनी रेसिपी जाने भी खाना कैसे बनता है, चाहे आप घर पे बना रहे हो चाहे आप होटल में रेस्टोरेंट में जाके खा रहे हो। एक बार देख लो कि जो आपको चीज़ सर्व की जा रही है वो फ्रेश है या स्टेल है। अगर बहुत सारा मिर्च मसाला है, बहुत सारी ग्रेवी है, तो सर्टेनली समथिंग इज बीइंग हिडन, और वो कुकिंग इस तरह से की जा रही है कि न्यूट्रिशन, आपको लग रहा है कि आप पनीर या नॉनवेज खा रहे हैं बट खास न्यूट्रिशन नहीं आ रही है आपको। ऑन द अदर हैंड देयर आर मेनी डिशेस जो कि रिलेटिवली सस्ती भी होंगी अगर आप देखें। एन एग्जांपल वुड बी अ तंदूरी डिश, अ ड्राई चिकन डिश और अ ड्राई पनीर डिश, जहाँ पे एक्स्ट्रा कोई एडिशन नहीं है, आपको पूरा न्यूट्रिशन मिल रहा है और वो चीज सस्ती भी है। ध्यान से देखें तो यू एक्चुअली विल बी गेटिंग मोर न्यूट्रिएंट फॉर ईच रुपी, फॉर ईच पैसा। और एक चीज जो मैम ने बोली मैं भी मानूंगा, क्योंकि हम ओपीडी में मरीजों को बोलते हैं, तो हम ये कहते हैं कि यदि आपको प्लेट रगड़नी पड़े साबुन के साथ या वो कढ़ाई रगड़नी पड़े साबुन के साथ, आपकी बॉडी को भी, आपके इंटेस्टाइन को, आंतड़ियों को, आपके पैंक्रियास को, आपके अग्नाशय को भी रगड़ना पड़ेगा उससे। सो इट विल टेक अ लॉन्ग टाइम फॉर द शुगर्स टू कम इन कंट्रोल, फॉर यू टू मैनेज योर बॉडी वेट। एंड मैम ने भी यही कहा, रोगन जोश खाओगे तो रोग ही होगा, जोश नहीं मिलने लगा, रोग ही होगा। एंड अवॉइड डीप फ्राइड स्टफ एट होम एंड सर्टेनली अवॉइड रीयूजिंग फूड। Ma'am, a lot of people are logged in who are in lifestyle medicine today, and they would like to all thank you for calling a spade, because we've very rarely had such a clear-cut opinion, all based on evidence, all based on science, and I'd like to thank you for that. सीमा जी एक क्वेश्चन पूछ रही है, मैम, वुड यू टॉक अबाउट cereals and millets, the common misconceptions that we have, whether it is millet, polished rice, polished wheat, what is the right thing to do at home? So our topic is nutrition for all.
Yeah.
We'd like you to talk about healthy use of cereals and millets for all.
Okay. See, the basically what we say is, whether you call it cereal or millet, they are all the seeds of the plant kingdom. Okay, that is the first thing. And if you say seeds, then they are the ones which have lot of endosperm or carbohydrates that are stored for it to become a plant subsequently. It's a food for that seed. It was not meant food for us only. It was meant to be originally the food for the plant to grow up again. So if you look at it from that point of view, it is like, you know, my name is Varsha, and there will be a Malti, and there will be a Sujata, and there will be a Radha, and, you know, all different names. We are all belonging to the category of being a woman. All right. And we all have two eyes and nose and mouth and ears and everything. And yet nobody will look at me and call me Sujata, or will not look at Sujata and call her Varsha. Why? We are still distinctly different. Same way, if you look at it, you know, whether it is rice or wheat or ragi or bajra or jowar, they all belong to one category that gives you as staple your carbohydrate source. So it makes no difference to me. I definitely do not promote and advocate mixture of all these things, because that is not how it is. It is much better. आप बिसी रोटी जाके कभी खा लो, या फिर आप jowar bajre ka chapati kha lo, you get a variety. There is no way, but you don't have to think it's a panacea, that you eat only one the millets and leave out the cereals. That's not true. Yes, the emphasis commercially has become one where we are talking only about rice or wheat, okay, which was not the case. But I do know of an individual who was absolutely into lifestyle. He was based in Gujarat, and he is beautifully written out as to when you can eat bajra ka roti and when you can eat even the fulkas versus the chapatis. I just admired the way, the clarity with which he had written out, and he said, you will eat fulkas only in the morning and at lunchtime. You will never eat fulkas for dinner, and you will eat only the bajra ka rotla for dinner, and you will not eat that for breakfast. So somewhere down the line, our ancestors have really evolved to know what worked well with what and how you should be eating it. This is where our traditions have been lost. What we need to do is we need to bring our traditional food into contemporary eating, which is not happening. Okay.
Ma'am,
I
we
did
have
write
a
an article which I called it as contemporary, I mean, traditionally contemporary or contemporarily traditional. And I put together the whole thing to say that, we need to bring forth on why our grandmother said, iske saath ye khao, iske saath mat khao. There was wisdom. They didn't know, they were not taught nutrition, but when I go back and look at it, I find that they were very, very sound on their nutritional principles.
principles, yes, which
Okay.
many people are not today.
Yes, rather than teaching the 3 R's, the arithmetic, reading, and writing, I would say that we must begin with nutrition. You are what you eat, and none of us know what we are eating.
Hmm. Ma'am, last week we had a beautiful KK Med talk with a person called Nishant Chobe, who is a chef, and he spoke to us about culinary medicine. And the same things that you are saying, let us bring that zinc back into our cooking. So within 10 minutes, he created for us a mini pizza. It was not a pizza, it was a very healthy thing. And all he used was suji and curd. So he created these mini pizzas. Vinny Joglegar from Bangalore was kind enough to do the nutritional calculations for us. Each pizza just 54 calories
Yes. Yes.
with a reasonable amount of protein as well on it. So,
Actually, if you look at it, our Indian cuisines, even if we were to adapt, but the sad thing is, without rational, if we adapt, it would be a wrong thing. I'll tell you my experience of eating idli and vada in Gujarat. Okay, I got the sambar, which was absolutely sweetened with good. Okay, and the people there, and I have also had people from Gujarat come to South, and when I very proudly present them the traditional food of Tamil Nadu, the idli dosa with chutney and sambar, they screwed up their nose and say it's not like what it is back home. So
hmm,
it is adaptation of how we do. Like we have adapted the Chinese, the Indian way. Poor Chinese people will never recognize what we are eating as
their
Chinese
food.
food. Okay.
So, ma'am, a
And
lot of people are smiling. Poonam
yeah,
Kishore Verma ji is smiling, and so is Manas Thapa ji. Thapa ji is a nutrition consultant, a professor in Kathmandu in Nepal. And what Manas ji is saying is that we Asians have our own nutritious traditional food. I also give the same example that you're doing while teaching my master students. So, ma'am, if I can ask you, and maybe Thapa ji can also sort of butt in. Now, in Nepal, the climate is different. You get different food. My
yes,
favorite actually is Nepalese sag when I go there.
yeah.
It's full of satiety, and I don't feel hungry, and I lose weight also. And when you go for Chettinad cuisine, again, you see that the way Chettinad cuisine evolved, there was very little to fall back upon. So that is
Yeah.
how the cuisine evolved, and that is why it is different from state to state. So, ma'am, any other examples that you can give? And the specific request is regarding fermented food. So,
Yeah.
fermented food in South Asia, how has that evolved? What are the do's and don'ts, the caveats and concerns?
Yeah, see, each one of the areas have created their own fermented food, right? The while the west part, whether it is Maharashtra or Gujarat or all of them, will talk of dokla and things like that. The same thing in the south, we are talking of idlis, and the same batter is fermented and we use it and make it not just idlis, even the same batter goes for making dosa. We have uttapam, we have so many different ways by which we eat it. So the process itself, each one of them have adapted on basis of how, what is their staple and how they like to eat it as a combination. So definitely, of course, when we look at it, the previous time when we got together, we were talking of Ayurveda, and Ayurveda has been like, very, very strict in the way you can eat, when you can eat fermented foods, when you cannot eat. And they have said that certain categories of people, we do not recommend them to eat fermented foods at all. Now, these are things, I know there is a book in Gujarati which is known as Arya Bishak, and I suppose every language has this sort of documentation, evidence based documentation. And I think the need of the art is we need to dig out all these old time books that we have. And, they're all in regional languages, but, we need to consolidate what the concepts were for each of these areas, because I think if we were to go dig in a little further, you would find that they're all talking same logic and same rational. But on why certain things must be eaten with certain things should not be eaten at some time, and that is very important at this point of time. While the British people have always emphasized on a hot breakfast, all right, Americans always talk of cold breakfast. And of late, whenever I've been to the UK, they will always ask me now, because we have become so global citizens, whether you want a hot breakfast or a cold breakfast. I prefer the hot one because it is fresh, it is made at that point of time, and it has a different flavor or whatever way it is consumed. So I definitely feel that sticking to your regional way of eating, promoting that sort of a thing is very important. Even if we are settled in different place, like for example, my family, though hails from Gujarat, has settled 300 years ago in the south. But I'm in no man's land, okay? Because when I wanted to get my medical seat, I was told I'm a North Indian Brahmin and I didn't get the seat. Political things apart, what I would basically say is that having lived here, we have sort of accepted the local foods as such. But very interestingly, I attend every year the probiotics conference that is hosted once a year. And a couple of years back, a speaker from Japan, when he was talking about probiotics, there was a highlight where he said that, if you are looking at the population of microbes inside you, it is traditional, great grandmother to mother to you. Okay. And if you're looking at that traditional food, if you're ill, works much better than trying anything else.
Because the
And
bacteria are
that makes
different from country to country, from place to
country
place.
to country. Okay. And that is where now, even wanting to transplant shit into the person has come back into vogue, right? We already had urine
Fecal,
therapy at
fecal
in
transplantation.
propagated. Yeah. Now even eating shit has come back to into practice, if you look at it in terms of science. But what I'm saying is, you don't have to go to that other extreme of eating your own shit, as long as what you make it go in the first place is something with a rational, then you're in less trouble. Okay.
So
But
then,
things have
yeah,
gone out of control where people are, trying to. I have so many patients who come and ask me, can we eat cornflakes for breakfast? Can we eat muesli? But why? Why can't you eat your traditional food?
ma'am, a question that is coming is about the probiotics and the fermented food. Like when we take curd, that has got bacteria and we eat them. But when we eat idli or dosa, so we heat it, we boil it. Do some of those microbes still survive?
No, it is the whole process of what the microbes have done already to the batter, and it has already changed the composition as such. Okay. Now, this is where I always say that, we do not believe in the Western concept of everything where, it can be measured. For example, they always say if you eat a McDonald's in Arizona versus you eat it in Florida versus you eat it in New York, they say that consistently across the US, it is the same composition. We can't say that. And at one point of time, I used to teach my students there are 500 varieties of rice. And an FAO consultant who was there at the MS Swaminathan Foundation corrected me and said, "Ma'am, there are 5,000 varieties of rice." So then I asked him, "How do you differentiate one from the other?" And he said, "If 1 hectare can produce zero point 0.9 metric tons, it is one variety. If the same 1 hectare will produce 1.1 metric ton, it is a different variety." So I said, the more the merrier means it is substandard, right? So, because it has divided itself into more parts, all right? I asked him the difference in the nutritive value from the same hectare. And then he said, that has never been a concern. We have been only looking at, what yield we can get out of each area. And if you will look at the nutritive value of Indian foods, you have just one value entered under the rice. You
Yes.
you do not know the differentiation. But I'm
Yes.
so surprised commercially. I've been asked, by people who want to market rice as diabetic rice. Now, Codex Alimentarius tells us you cannot call food by the name of the disease at all. But unfortunately, this knowledge is not disseminated. And so you have food which is called diabetic food, cardiac food, renal food. So if a person is diabetic, my question is diabetic nephropathy. So you need to cut down on proteins. But diabetes itself cut down on carbohydrate, and diabetic cardiopathy cut down on fat. तो आप खाएगा क्या?
Yeah. So just
हवा?
like rice is not homogeneous, similarly diabetes or any other disease is also not homogeneous. But ma'am, point is well taken. Ma'am, from Karnal, Mr. Sunny Grover, and from Sonipat, Mr. Lalit Kathuria greet you, and also Mr. Sharma from Lucknow. And Mr. Sharma says, ma'am, in just one sentence, could you please answer, are non-sticking pans good to use in the kitchen?
See, basically, Teflon was always considered as very safe and non reactive, to the extent that I have great regards for my colleague from Ramchandra, who was a neurosurgeon. And he said when he traveled from abroad, he never brought any other goodies except carried rolls and rolls of Teflon, because for trigeminal neuralgia, he was putting Teflon inside the brains. To that extent, it is very, very non-reactive, or doesn't harm us. So if we are able to, but my other point is that when we were using clay vessels, when we were using iron kadai, okay, we got some nutrition out of it. All right. While Teflon is non-reactive, so maybe you use less fat when you want to eat fry. But now things like air fryers have come, and it is not. We have not tested to know what it does. So it is like America has, that is, I call Americans the craziest creation of God. Nothing is small, smaller, smaller. It is not beautiful for them. It has to be large, larger, largest. So they have now created a product which looks like butter, feels like butter, tastes like butter, but it is not absorbed. तो इसमें मजा क्या है खाने का? अपने लॉर्ड कृष्णा ने तो चुरा चुरा के मक्खन खाया, तो हम क्यों ऐसा खाए जिसका कोई मतलब ही नहीं है?
बट ऑफ कोर्स एक्सरसाइज भी उतनी करें जितनी लॉर्ड कृष्णा ने की थी, तो उन्होंने पर्वत उठाया तो आप डंबल तो उठा लें थोड़े से. एंड ललित कपूरिया जी सपोर्ट्स यू मैम विद दैट. ही सेज दैट डंबल भी उठाने चाहिए. एंड आल्सो what he's saying is that if you take curd which has been laid out to set in a clay pot, the taste is totally different.
Different, exactly. Not only that, even the batter, that you make for idli, suppose you were to do it in the stone mortar and pestle, the taste is different than when you grind it in the mixie, in the blender. Okay.
Yeah.
So because each has a different technology by which it does this, the end product may be the same, but the technology by which it happens is different. and and
The
and this is what we need to learn. I when I'm teaching my students, I tell them food science class mein hai na main so gayi thi kyunki it was not made so interesting, but now I regret, that I slept through my food science class, because I am really anxious in trying to understand, what is the difference between each one of them. For example, nobody is still able to answer. Nobody from the industry that makes biscuits is still able to answer my simple question, that what I was taught was that to get the consistency of a biscuit to rise, the dough to rise, it had to be in the maida form. So I do not know how you can add extra fiber and still get that biscuit. Nobody explains to me this. Okay, because the person who comes to tell you that, ये digestive है, ये nutritive है, ये सब कुछ जो बोलते हैं all bran उस पे लिखा है, तो कितना bran है, आपने कितना ऐड किया है, and how does it make a difference in my final nutritional composition. लेबलिंग का तो कंसेप्ट ही नहीं है. और आजकल जो लेबलिंग होता भी है ना, तो you just take the same product for which the labeling is done in the West versus what is done in India. We are doing shortcuts. We are just doing a whitewash on it. And worse still, nobody is even reading the labels to know कि उसमें से क्या मिल रहा है, क्या नहीं मिल रहा है. They will say sugar free, sugar नहीं ऐड किया, but maltodextrin ऐड किया है. तो maltodextrin is other form of sugar. Do
sugar.
we know that?
Calories भी पूरी हैं. And the
हाँ,
calories are the same, ma'am, at the end of it.
people are told कि नहीं आप sugar मत लो, honey लो, but for gram to gram it's same calories, same amount of carbohydrates.
Ma'am, Dr. Pawar agrees with you. Sir is a senior pediatrician. He says, can we advise one egg per day to all children? And what is this concept of egg with yolk and egg without yolk? Does that make any sense?
It doesn't. I definitely tell people, I've been fighting on this count with a lot of these gyms, and people who come on the advice on the radio, where they talk about 10 egg whites to be consumed to build up your muscles. तो बेचारा जो hen है उसने it created the egg for its progeny, not for your stomach. And despite it doing, it is an insult to our mother earth, from which that chicken ate, or the chick ate only the grains and produced that egg. That whole system, it is very expensive for you to be eating, processing your grains through the chicken and the egg. All right, why must you throw off the egg yolk? Who will eat it? Or if not, each one of us who will buy eggs, eat only the white and throw away the yolk. Is it that colossal wastage? So why must you eat 10 egg whites? And yes, one egg, fine. But I always tell them that egg is a bonus and not a substitute to your dal and vegetables. We are born vegetarians, because even your starch is by the process of photosynthesis, and you and I can wear green color, but we cannot produce our own starch. You need the chlorophyll, you
I
need the
never thought of
plants.
that, ma'am. I never thought of it that way, but you are right.
Yeah, your plants are the ones who give you your currency of the body. Your carbohydrate comes from plants, so you're vegetarian. Second thing is that you're getting your proteins, nitrogen from the atmosphere. Though we breathe, we cannot make use of it. It has to be fixed. Who fixes it? Leguminous plants. No animal can convert it and give it to you. We may say high biological protein. अगर आप chicken mutton खाते हो तो protein मिलता है. You are eating carcass. It's a dead protein. मरने के बाद ही उसको खाते हो आप. You want to eat live protein? Eat your plants. Leguminous, they are the ones who made it. So that
And
also makes you vegetarian.
yeah,
And if
and
you were to take your fat from the vegetarian plants, there is no cholesterol in plants. We are
yes.
all
And
worried
there's
about
a common
taking statins.
question that we have, ma'am, in endocrinology. That is, what is the glycemic index of almonds? That is one of my favorites. The answer is 0. And the other one is how much cholesterol is there in 100 grams of cashew nuts, roasted cashew nuts. So there also you get answers from across the world except 0.
Yes.
Ma'am, I think there is an issue with the way we teach. We speak about essential amino acids. So then everybody realizes some amino acids are essential. But we never use the word essential carbohydrates, essential fibers. I think that is where perhaps we need to go back to our books, and maybe the onus lies upon us, ma'am,
No,
to
when
begin
we
teaching
talk
the right
about
way.
no, when we talk about carbohydrate, basically the word that is very vital is complex carbohydrate.
Yes.
Okay, the word that is the word essential is to be related to the word complex carbohydrate.
Complex. Yes.
So, if we are talking about taking the whole cereals, and you will get no carbohydrate from any non-veg source, because by the
Mhm.
time the muscles have very little of it, of the glucose as such, and by the time the animal is dead, that glucose is totally dissipated. So, we get no glucose at all when we eat non-vegetarian. Then they turned around and said, "Oh, you don't need carbohydrate at all because your amino acids, the glucogenic amino acids can give you glucose. So you don't need carbohydrate." No, at least a minimum of 100 grams of carbohydrate has to be there to spare your protein to do its job of bodybuilding and repairing, and also for the fats which have to be moving. There is glycolipids and glycoproteins. So you
So
definitely need at least a minimum of 100 grams of carbohydrates in an adult, a 70 kg adult. So then in that case, you rather give something which is complex carbohydrate, because that is a better way of utilizing in the body, rather than throwing, like you throw coal in the engine and it becomes ashes in no time. You cannot afford to be only taking simple carbohydrates, because then the spike is much higher. Now, when you look at it in terms of vegetarian food, automatically you get complex carbohydrate, okay? And this concept of high biological protein in only through non-veg is not true, because we, like cipher, India gave cipher, the zero, the value of zeros, is understood only when you keep adding the number of zeros behind the number, right? We gave that concept. Same way, complementary protein is a concept India has gifted to the world. What is missing in cereals, which are nothing but seeds of plants, is made available to you by the seeds of the same plant coming from leguminous plants. And जब इन दोनों की शादी करते हो ना, तो you get perfect combination of not just the protein, the complementary protein, but also the supportive carbohydrate and mono or polyunsaturated fatty acids, which does not increase your saturated fat.
So, ma'am, a point well taken. Complex carbohydrates can also be termed as essential carbohydrates. And maybe मुझे लग रहा है कि हमारी तरफ से गलती है, we are not teaching properly. अगर हम वो essential word जोड़ देंगे complex के साथ, then maybe people will respect. Complementary proteins is a very good concept. Ma'am, we have with us, and we have so many questions today. I apologize to everyone जिनके नाम नहीं ले पा रहा और topics नहीं ले पा रहा. जो questions पूछ रहे हैं आयुर्वेद पे, constipation पे. In the recent past, we have had topics on these by Dr. Varsha and also by Dr. Pavan Rawal on Ayurveda and nutrition, and also on constipation and nutrition. But Dr. Muthu Krishnan Jayaraman, who is a senior endocrinologist, he says, ma'am, in vegetarians who are physically active, is it necessary? Is it possible to get 100 to 150 grams? And ma'am, if you could structure your answer in two parts. First is nutrition for all. तो इस क्वेश्चन को न्यूट्रिशन फॉर ऑल के नजरिए से देखते हैं जो डॉक्टर मथु कृष्णन ने पूछा है, एंड दूसरा होगा न्यूट्रिशन फॉर एथलीट्स, स्पोर्ट्स न्यूट्रिशन. तो दोनों
Yeah.
को अलग अलग हैंडल करते हैं, एंड थैंक्स डॉक्टर मुथु फॉर आस्किंग दिस क्वेश्चन.
150 grams of what?
प्रोटीन मैम पर डे.
You don't need 150 grams of protein at all. We generally say that we go by the concept of, the RDAs were written for when I want to deal with groups of people. Okay, but they are not applicable to individuals. So when we make an assessment, if I look at it from the clinical nutrition point of view, we never talk of RDAs, we talk per kg body weight. And generally we say it is safest to consume anything between 1.9 to 1 gram per kilogram body weight. So I don't see anybody who is 150 kilos and requires 150 grams of protein. That's point number one. Okay. And the second thing that we basically look at it is, even everything in per kg body weight, even the calories that we need to give has to be on per kg body weight. And in the terms of athletes, when we look at it, there is a different way in how we handle. Now, here, what we need to understand is that we do not have storage of carbohydrates in the body. Okay, whatever little carbohydrate that is available with us is in your liver, okay, in the form of glycogen, and in your muscles, also again in the form of glycogen. Now, this, if you're not doing any extra activity, you're just doing your routine work, you might find that you have stores that will last you for maybe half a day. But if suddenly while I'm talking to you and there is a scream, earthquake, and I start running from here, even before from the second floor to the ground floor, my glycogen is out. I have nothing left. I'll be panting and I'll have to stop myself, because what has happened? I have used up my glycogen in no time. Now, this is where what we look at is that fat is almost akin to whether आप दिया तेल लेते हो in a lamp, or you talk of a candle. Your candle may be a thick one, but it won't give you light unless you have the fiber wick in the middle, which is carbohydrate. It's in the flame of carbohydrate that the fat will burn. So you will find that even fat people who have extra fat or people who have no fat, both of them have problems because they don't have that accessible to them at all. So, what do you do in athletes? We do what is known as carbo-loading. Carbo-loading is a concept by which we try to see that your muscles are in a position, which means first you must have muscles for you to carbo-load. And that requires a lot of training and effort and bodybuilding in such a way that you have enough muscles to support your carbo loading. All right, now this concept of carbo loading is also coming in for people who are going in for surgery. जो स्पोर्ट्स में कर रहे थे, we are trying to bring it into the patients who are going in for surgery, such that we are able to give them support for some time with carbohydrate, which means that they don't break down muscles, because the fat is not going to be utilized at all. So what are you going to be breaking down is your muscles. The gluconeogenic amino acids, the glucogenic amino acids are the ones which you're going to break down. So catabolism is at its maximum, both when you are into sports, when you're using your muscles, and also when you're highly catabolic in the post surgery. And the upper mark is your burns patient. So maximally, we say you can go up to 2.5, maybe 3 grams of per kg of protein. But we need to be very careful and cautious about it, because the more protein we give, it does not become carbon dioxide, water, and nitrogen. It becomes urea, which means you need more fluid. And these are the people, when they have more protein, they need more water, and that doesn't happen.
Yes. This I have realized in my personal experience as well. If you have a balance, things are much better. And health, for everybody, health is not just about today or tomorrow, that today I want to run a marathon, tomorrow I want to run. It's about being sustainable. You would want to run a marathon for the next 100 years. Also, carb loading is an important concept. Dr. Barun Hanjum Sharma from BHU, he is the president of ISSCM, that is Indian Society for Sports and Exercise Medicine. He also propagates this. And ma'am, we have an invitation from Nepal, both you and I. Manas Thapaji has invited us to enjoy the Nepalese saag, which is, like I said,
Lovely.
his
Thank you so
favorite.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
From Uttarakhand, we have another dal. It is called bhat ki dal in Hindi, and in English, it's called black soybean. This has
Yeah.
got the highest protein content amongst all South Asian dals. So that is also something you can try. It comes from Uttarakhand and from Nepal.
I have a caution as far as soya is concerned. If you will
Yeah.
go by our environmentalist, Dr. Vandana Shiva, there is a lovely, beautiful book that she has written called Stolen Harvest. And I take that as a gospel for me, because she says, and I agree with her, India never produced soya. And that is
Yes.
why we are world's biggest population. Because soya has got factors which, if a young girl in her growing years consumes, she has a modification wherein her female progeny will have multiple miscarriages and a male progeny will be impotent.
Ma'am,
So
would you like to repeat that again in both Hindi and English, please?
हाँ, अगर आप सोया लेते हैं, सोया में एक कंपोनेंट जो है वो खाने से जो लड़की, बिकॉज इट इज द गर्ल हु इज द मदर, राइट, सो जो लड़की अपने ग्रोइंग पीरियड में सोया कंज्यूम करती है तो उसकी जो फीमेल प्रोजेनी है उसको मल्टीपल मिसकैरेजेस, वो आपको दादी या नानी नहीं बना सकती, और जो जो मेल प्रोजेनी है वो इम्पोर्टेंट होता है, because there is a hormonal impact of soya, and soya is was grown maximally in the US. They don't want to consume it, but they dump it on us. Rest of the world never understands the concept of the dals that we have. मैंने बिगिनिंग में बोला ना टावर ऑफ बेबल यहाँ होगा, वैसे हमारा ये प्रोटीन का भी ज्यादा यहीं से है. वी हैव ग्रीन ग्राम, रेड ग्राम, ब्लैक ग्राम, तूर दाल, मसूर दाल, चना, छोला, राजमा, इतनी वैरायटी रख के हमें सोया क्यों खाना है?
So soybean does have phytoestrogens, and there is a point in what ma'am is saying. And I think the take home would be an informed decision making. Get the right information and take an informed decision. जो भी करें, अगर आप moderation में करें, then you can avoid these things. But of course, Sunny Grover from Karnal says, "Ma'am, I love dosa and moderation. आप बाकी जगह जहाँ मर्जी बोल दो, I will follow your advice. But dosa में moderation, it is difficult to stop at
No,
one."
no, I will still tell you, eat your dosa with sambar and chutney. In fact, when I talk to my South Indian patients, I say your main dish is sambar and chutney, and the accompaniment is idli, dosa, idiyappam, uttapam, upma, pongal, whichever way you want.
That's right. I think Sunny follows your advice. Ma'am, we have with us Dr. Sadbir Singh Dagar. Dr. Sadbir Singh is a sports specialist, a sports medicine specialist, practicing at Mohali in Punjab. And he has taken care of many of the successful sport teams from Punjab and Haryana. So he's thanking you for your insights. And he's thanking you, ma'am, for how you've blended nutrition for all with nutrition for specific persons. I think that is something that we've learned, and you've actually opened our eyes, you've opened our minds to this vast and beautiful world of nutrition medicine, ma'am.
Yes, because life's greatest pleasure is eating, sir. And people hate going to a dietitian or a nutritionist thinking uske paas jayenge, my wife cooks so well and she will tell me list of don'ts, like yes, nahi khana. I tell them I don't want to take away the pleasure of life. You only need to understand the rationale of where you're going wrong and how you need to correct it and in what period of time. Okay, today's session has got people who are talking of lifestyle, and it has to be that we follow a lifestyle which is conducive to us. It should be because eating for us has always been associated with celebration. आप बर्थडे में जाओ, एक साल ज्यादा हो गए, आप मरने के लिए पास गए एक साल, फिर भी आप बर्थडे सेलिब्रेट करते हो, और फिर बर्थडे में भी मुझे आपके बर्थडे से कोई मतलब नहीं है, आप क्या खिला रहे हो उससे मुझे मतलब
उससे
है.
मतलब
आप शादी में जा रहे हो, कल से तो वो दोनों मियाँ बीबी झगड़ा ही करेंगे, वो हम जानते हैं, हमको उससे कोई मतलब नहीं है. आप लेकिन शादी में आप क्या खिला रहे हो उसी से मुझे मतलब है. आप हमको नेपाल में भी आज बुलाया गया है खाने के लिए. तो इट इज अ बिगेस्ट जॉय एंड प्लेजर
joy.
ऑफ लाइफ. ओके,
So we
सो
should enjoy these joys, I think, but again in moderation. Ma'am, the comments are so many. I really apologize to everybody. सबके ले नहीं पा रहे हैं comments. 8 o'clock हो गए. Ma'am, if we can have just short answers. Sunny, point well taken. डोसा मेरा दोस्त है. I agree with you. And सीमा जी कह रही हैं, ma'am, if we add salt to yogurt, then do the good bacteria, the good microbes, do they get destroyed if we add salt or sugar to yogurt?
see, basically, you need to understand on how long you leave it. If you're looking at salt as such per se, it is the question of the intake of sodium. So it is not something we look at it as a generalized. It's a part of your recipe and how you do it. If we have used salt as a pickling or a preservative, definitely you are destroying something that is going to change the consistency of the product. But if you're adding salt to taste and consuming it, then it is a different purpose altogether. So are you using salt for a pickling purpose or a preservative purpose, or are you using salt because you want it as a taste? That is the determinant. But after you have added, you have cooked it and you leave it for long period and then you heat it and reheat it, then you're again changing the composition.
Right. Ma'am, Dr. Piyush is logged in from the USA and he says, thank you for your pearls of wisdom. Seema ji एक point कह रही हैं, if you can help her, I'm not sure. She says कि पढ़ाई तो कभी खत्म ही नहीं होगी, एंड पीयूष जी भी वही कह रहे हैं यूएसए से कि पढ़ाई तो कभी खत्म नहीं होगी, एंड अब खाना खाने की भी बेला आ गई, इट इज टाइम टू हैव डिनर नाउ, बट हाउ डू आई learn about nutrition? I understand that such webinars are important, but at the same time I understand that if I have a certificate, if I go through a formal course of education, that will help me. I am 44 years old now, so can you help, ma'am, any good program that I can do?
I did. I created Indian Institute of Nutritional Science, okay, and I was mainly interested in general public as per your age, okay. And I did have one youngster, she was just about all of 15 years, who in her May vacation came all the way to study about nutrition because she wanted to know how she needs to handle herself. I promote that because age related requirements are totally different, and I encourage a pregnant mother on how she should eat, not only for herself but for her growing fetus. I also would like to encourage and train a lactating mother as to how she should be feeding herself as well as a baby. And then it starts with the life cycle concept. So yes, I can put together a program for anybody who wants, because as I said right in the beginning, you are what you eat. You should be learning first about nutrition more than about writing, reading, and arithmetic. So I'm willing to put a program for anybody who is willing to, on a one-to-one basis or a group together, where I can teach the same basic concepts and answer your question and give you a certificate. Because I was told, that Indian Institute is a name that is usually by act of parliament, but I'm proud to say I own this name. So I'm dedicating it to the nutrition for all, and I will certify you saying that at least you are competent enough to handle your own nutrition. If you can take it forward and practice it in your family and impact on the family, I'm much happier. I would definitely encourage girls and women to do this, because they are the homemakers and they are the ones who impact their children. But I definitely offer this, that I'm willing to do the teaching as far as individuals interest in nutrition is concerned. It could be that if as a professional you want to understand how you want advice. I know it, American Dietetic Association, British Dietetic Association, they have set a standard for our professional practice, which says we need to spend 60 to 90 minutes with every person on, and we are not supposed to impose our prescription. We are supposed to motivate them to acknowledge and accept the changes that we recommend. Now, for every professional to be spending so much time when you are an endocrinologist or a surgeon or a physician is not possible. We are there to do that part of the job, but we all have to be on the same wavelength so that our services are utilized. Because nutrition, H.M. Sinclair said, Pythagoreans, including Hippocrates, practiced diet as the main line of therapy and drugs fail. All medical colleges the world over practice drugs as the main line of therapy and diet when drugs fail.
Point well taken, ma'am, and I'd like to thank you for all that you have taught us today. That take-home message is very important. Use nutrition, but use it sensibly, use it scientifically, and use it in an evidence-based manner. And not just because you have a particular opinion or you've read some fad diet, just begin propagating that. To all the people whose questions we've not been able to take, I promise you, ma'am को हम दोबारा बुलाएंगे. एक लास्ट पॉइंट लेते हैं नेपाल से, जो कि मानस थापा जी ने रेज किया है, that wood utensils can also be used, and that is what is used in rural Nepal to make curd, and it's very tasty.
Yes.
Thank
Each
you,
area
Manas.
has a different thing, Dr. Kalra. If you look at it in terms of the south, they have a particular type of stone vessels in which they did the cooking, especially Kerala and even in some part of interior Tamil Nadu. They use stone vessels. So each area has developed their own way, and they will really fight for the cause, saying that this is the best way of doing it. So definitely, yes, I will agree that, in our country, we have got something which is Dhanvantri, life generating, life supporting, and I think we need to document it and tell the rest of the world. When I went to Leeds University, the first thing the resource person, Professor Alal Shenkin, said, Varsha, I will accept you as a student for clinical nutrition, provided you promise you will not settle in UK and you'll go back to India.
That's a good idea. That's a good point. I would agree with him. So I'd like to thank everybody for having logged in today. KK Med Talks रोज आपकी सेवा में हाजिर होता है और मैं आपके साथ होता हूँ हर सोमवार और वीरवार, एवरी मंडे एंड थर्सडे 7 to 8 PM। और डॉक्टर पवन ने जैसे कहा, मैम को बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत मेहरबानी। मैम, आपने हमें हमारे मदर की तरह पढ़ाया है। It's as if you've been giving us wisdom from our mom. So thank you मैम for that. मैं आपको फिर मिलूंगा अगले सोमवार। हमारे साथ होंगे डॉक्टर जो जॉर्ज। डॉक्टर जो जॉर्ज हैं कोझिकोडे से, कैलिकट से, एंड वील बी टॉकिंग अबाउट एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ एंडोक्रिनोलॉजी। और जैसे मैम ने आज हमारी आंखें खोल दी, हमारा दिमाग खोल दिया, मैम हैज ओपनड आवर आईज, आवर ब्रेन टू द इनफाइनाइट पॉसिबिलिटीज ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन फॉर ऑल, न्यूट्रिशन फॉर हेल्थ। इसी तरह से हम अगले सोमवार एंडोक्रिनोलॉजी, हार्मोन्स के बारे में बात करेंगे, उनके यूज और मिस यूज के बारे में। तो इस सबसे आप सबकी इजाजत लेते हैं। मैम आपकी इजाजत लेते हैं। थैंक यू, धन्यवाद एंड जय हिंद।
Thank you and Jai Hind. Yeah.